Welcome to the Underclass Podcast with Austin Picard. I'm an independent researcher who can't stomach being lied to on a daily basis by the mainstream media, while we live in a fracturing society, launched into parallel realities, falling perfectly onto the two sides of the political spectrum. I remain in the underclass. Today, we explore the anatomy of a conspiracy theory as we peel back the dark, disturbing layers of deceit intended to fit the conveniently constructed false narrative socially engineered into the minds of the over-socialized, undereducated, and emotionally reactive American public. What happens if we have all been preconditioned to accept a widely prevalent epidemic of discontent, with the only solution being to further disarm law-abiding citizens? Our story begins with an example of hubris, often reflected in the actions of our bureaucratic overlords. Operation Fast and Furious, the forgotten history of the ATF's gun-walking scandal. According to investigative journalist Sam Jacobs, the ATF had a policy of letting illegal gun purchases go between 2006 and 2011. It ended up getting U.S. Border Patrol agent Brian Terry killed on December 14, 2010, and let Mexican criminal organizations get enough guns that they were found at over 150 crime scenes where Mexican citizens were either killed or maimed. And some of the guns were even used in the November 2015 terrorist attacks in Paris at the Bataclan. Operation Fast and Furious was just one of many operations done under the umbrella of Project Gunrunner, a project allegedly intended to stem the flow of firearms into Mexico by interdicting straw purchasers and gun traffickers within the United States. According to Jacobs, started under George W. Bush, this ATF policy audaciously grew under President Obama and became indicative of the perceived attack on American gun owners by both policymakers and their friends in the establishment media. It's one of many scandals of the Obama administration that was never given as much press attention, given that the guns run by the ATF were allowed to kill hundreds and that subsequent congressional investigators resulted in Eric Holder, President Obama's Attorney General, becoming the first sitting cabinet member to be held in criminal contempt of Congress ever. This is shocking, at least for anyone still under the illusion that the establishment media is a fair and impartial source of information. Project Gunrunner was a project of the ATF designed to intercept weapons bound for Mexican cartels and criminal organizations. ATF, the same agency who entrapped peaceful, law-abiding citizen Randy Weaver into selling them a single sawed-off shotgun, then pursued him as if he were mounting an armed insurrection, shooting and killing his wife, son, and dog, decided to allow straw purchases, which are technically legal, but often involve the crime of providing false information when purchasing a firearm, to happen in the hopes that these purchases would end up in the hands of Mexican criminal organizations. The thinking was that, rather than going after crimes considered to be small potatoes, the ATF could focus on bigger fish, organizational gun running in the Southwest and over the border in Mexico. By letting guns purchased illegally to walk or not be prosecuted, the federal government can keep an eye on them, arresting people for much more serious crimes later. That's the idea, anyway. The execution ended up being something much different. Beginning in 2006, the Phoenix office of the ATF not only allowed, but also facilitated and encouraged straw purchases of firearms to known weapons traffickers. They then allowed the weapons to walk to Mexico. Gun Owners of America has stated that they believe this was an attempt to boost statistics for the ATF, thus securing more funding. Most of the funding for this came from $40 million in competitive grants from the 2009 stimulus package, which was largely a giant giveaway to large banks. Such self-serving actions by the ATF are not unheard of. During the congressional inquiry following the ATF's siege of the Branch Davidian complex in Waco, Henry Ruth, one of the three independent reviewers from the U.S. Treasury Department, testified that the ATF needed good publicity. With its appropriations hearings a week away, a successful raid this size would produce major positive headlines to counter the ATF's reputation as a rogue agency whose debacles blackened the reputations of other agencies, and it would scare the public enough about fringe groups to create political pressure on Congress to increase its budget. Some legitimate gun dealers objected to being involved in Project Gunrunner, as did some ATF agents, but they were strong-armed into participation by top brass. What's more, the practices that became associated with Project Gunrunner were in opposition to long-established ATF operating procedures. As stated above, Operation Fast and Furious was only one of several such operations. The name itself, Operation Fast and Furious, is related to the fact that the suspects were involved in car racing together. Operation Fast and Furious simply picked up the gun-walking practices which had been going on previously, as if they were new again. Once again, the operation began when a firearms dealer contacted the ATF about a suspicious purchase. Many of these purchases involved hundreds of weapons. What's more, there was no official collaboration between the firearms dealers and the ATF. Perhaps most disturbing is that both Mexican law enforcement officials and the Mexico City office of the ATF were left completely in the dark about what was going on. In January 2010, the ATF applied for and received additional funding and was reorganized as a strike force that included members of the ATF, FBI, DEA, and ICE, run through the United States Attorney's Office rather than under the jurisdiction of the ATF. The weapons dealers started raising red flags because they kept seeing the same straw buyers over the course of months, purchasing the same weapons over and over again, which is highly unusual. Standard practice is that the dealers tend to only see straw buyers again at trial, if at all. What's more, the ATF generally arrests the straw buyer and members of the larger criminal organization at the point of transfer, confiscating the weapons in the process. Not only did this not happen under Operation Fast and Furious, the top brass within the ATF prevented agents on the ground from following standard operating procedures. All told, by June 2010, suspects surveilled under Operation Fast and Furious had purchased over 1,600 weapons at a total spend of over $1 million. At that time, not at the end of the operation, the ATF were aware of over 300 of these weapons being found at crime scenes, 179 in Mexico and 130 in the United States. To put it bluntly, ATF facilitated gun trafficking that resulted in crimes on American soil. Weapons transferred with ATF compliance and assistance have continued to turn up at crime scenes long after the end of Operation Fast and Furious. Former Attorney General Eric Holder has stated on the record that he believes the weapons will continue to turn up for years to come. The weapons have been used in several high-profile crimes in Mexico, including the use of a .50 cal against a Mexican police helicopter and the murder of a Mexican beauty queen. The most noteworthy crime the weapons have been used in, however, is the coordinated Islamist attacks on Paris in 2015, including the famous attack against the Eagles of Death metal concert at the Bataclan. The ATF itself tracked weapons used in the attack to a Phoenix dealership known to be associated with Operation Fast and Furious. There is virtually no way to know how many people and American citizens are dead because of the unethical actions of the ATF. Let's imagine a world where the intended reaction is no longer achieved so easily, and we all take a moment to actually reflect on the details while remaining skeptical of the prevailing narrative. Nothing is ever what it seems, and as we explore the anatomy of a conspiracy theory, we peel back the dark, disturbing layers of deceit intended to fit the conveniently constructed false narrative socially engineered into the minds of the over-socialized, undereducated, and emotionally reactive American public. According to the official narrative, on October 1st, 2017, a mass casualty shooting event occurred when a 64-year-old mentally disturbed man named Stephen Paddock opened fire on the crowd attending the Route 91 Harvest Country Music Festival on the Las Vegas Strip from his 32nd floor suites in the Mandalay Bay Hotel. He fired more than 1,000 rounds of ammunition, approximately 490 yards into the festival audience, ultimately killing 60 people and wounding at least 400 others. About an hour later, he was found dead in his room from what was reported to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound. To this day, the motive for the shooting is officially undetermined. The mass shooting occurred between 10:05 p.m. and 10:15 p.m. on October 1st, 2017, which was the third and final night of the festival. When the shooting began, country music singer Jason Aldean was giving his closing performance.
He refused to believe it was a shooting until it just kept going and going.
It sounded like just a firework, something that you think normally happens in Vegas, and then it just started going pop, 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 pop.
It just kept going and going, and my husband said, "That's not firecrackers, that sounds like a semi-automatic rifle." And then everybody started screaming.
People just started dropping around us, and everybody tried to stay down, and every time like a group would get up to try to run away, they just start shooting again.
And you can just hear the rounds almost like creeping up on you, and it feels like it's like hunting you down. You can hear them coming closer.
And they said run, and everyone started stampeding and charging.
The exits they're in the wrong spot. They're towards where the shooting was. You think the shooting is happening.
Knew it was chaos and mayhem because people were running out of everywhere, and the police were really unaware of where the ground person was. They were going this way, that way.
And then I saw a window come out and glass shatter everywhere, and then 2 or 3 more windows came out, and then an open machine gun fire out that direction. You could see the blinds from the window. I didn't see a person, but they were shooting towards the concert area, and I don't know if they looked to be going higher than that, not down, but that probably was 200, 300 rounds. And interspersed in between, while maybe reloading or something, there was interior gunfire too.
Citing the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department's preliminary investigative report, shortly before 10 p.m., hotel security guard Jesus Campos was sent to the 32nd floor to investigate an open door alert. He attempted to open a door that provided immediate access to the floor, but found that it would not open. After Campos entered the floor, he discovered an L-shaped bracket screwed into the door and door frame, which prevented the door from opening. After reporting the discovery to his dispatch center, he heard what he thought was the sound of rapid drilling coming from room 32-135 and went to investigate the matter. At approximately 10:05 p.m., he was hit in the right thigh by one of about 35 bullets that Paddock fired through the door of his suite. After Campos was hit, he took cover in the alcove between rooms 32-122 and 32-124 and immediately informed the hotel by radio and cell phone that he had been shot, though he believed he had been shot with a BB gun or a pellet gun. At the same time, maintenance worker Stephen Schuck was on the same floor to fix the door that Campos had reported as being barricaded. The already wounded Campos encountered Schuck and told him to take cover. Schuck contacted hotel dispatchers over his radio, informed them of the ongoing shooting, and told them to call the police. Neither the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department nor MGM Resorts International, the Mandalay Bay's owner, have confirmed when information about the initial shooting was relayed to the police. The investigative report described Paddock using a hammer to break two of the windows in both of his suites and began shooting through them at 10:05 p.m. Many people in the crowd initially mistook the gunfire for fireworks. During the shooting, police officers were initially confused whether the shots were coming from the Mandalay Bay, the nearby Luxor Hotel, or the festival grounds, and there were multiple reports of additional shooters at other hotels on the Strip. According to Las Vegas Criminal Defense, 1 month after the Las Vegas massacre on October 1st, observers are still looking for a satisfactory answer for the shooting. Claiming that mainstream media has given up on covering the attacks, conspiracy theorists believe the public has bought into the lone wolf scenario that claimed 59 lives. 8 key witnesses perished in questionable conditions within 30 days of the mass shooting. The report says that each of the 8 had something in common besides being present throughout the gunfire. They each knew details of the massacre, which contradicted the authorized narrative. 4 of the 7 gave accounts to the media which stated there was more than one shooter. Others died before they could speak out. Dennis and Lorraine Carver. The Carvers perished when the car they were in veered from the road and exploded. The couple from California was killed instantly in the fiery wreck. Miss Carver had told the media of her spouse shielding her from the shooters by spotting a beer locker in which to hide until it was okay to run. After escaping, she shared reports on Facebook, letting family and friends know they were fine, and added, "I believe the shooters have gone." A week after the wreck, which claimed the Carvers, the couple's oldest daughter, Brooke, received her father's cell phone. Through the chaos, Mr. Carver had dropped his phone, and it wound up in the FBI's possession. Reports say phones and laptops of witnesses were taken and erased by the FBI. Danny Contreras, 35, was killed after being chased by 2 gunmen. His corpse was recovered in an abandoned house after a woman heard a man moaning and called the police. Law enforcement investigated the report and found Contreras dead. Contreras had posted on Twitter and said, regarding the Las Vegas shooting, "Feeling lucky to be alive. Can't believe I got out of concert. 2 men stalking me with guns." Kimberly Sukumel. Sukumel, 28, may be the most publicized death following the shooting. Sukumel was uninjured at the shooting, but described to the media the attacks and how they were carried out by multiple gunmen who were firing weapons. Sukumel's post on Facebook went viral. She said multiple gunmen were not just firing weapons in the crowd, but also pursuing people and shooting them, even at point-blank range. A week after the posting, she was found dead in bed at her Apple Valley home. Sukumel's grandmother, Julie Norton, told reporters, "I believe the stress from the shooting took her life." Orville Allman, the attorney which represented the music festival, as well as Jason Aldean, the singer who was on stage when the shooting began, died from a seizure during sleep, according to Nashville media. After the massacre and before his death, Allman reportedly told a friend that his meetings with MGM, Las Vegas police, and the FBI were strange and complex. The lawyer was privy to information which the federal agency didn't disclose publicly. Allman's 35-year career included representing recording artists and songwriters, as well as record company execs. The WUC report ends by saying, "Whether this series of deaths and disappearances are coincidental, or if there is something deeply sinister afoot, has not yet been determined." According to authorities with the Clark County Commission, the name 1 October was declared the official title for investigations into the mass shooting, and officials from the FBI and ATF quickly responded to assist in the investigation. Hidden surveillance cameras were discovered by investigators placed inside and outside the hotel room, and according to Clark County Sheriff Joe Lombardo, at a press conference on October 4th, he stated there was evidence, which he declined to discuss, that Paddock had intended to escape the scene and that he may have had assistance from an accomplice. The Independent published an article the day after the massacre, October 2nd, reporting that concert goers were told, "You're all going to fucking die," less than an hour before the Las Vegas shooting started. A woman in the crowd is said to have yelled the warning about 45 minutes before the Route 91 Harvest Festival became the venue for the worst mass shooting in U.S. history. After her outburst, it was claimed the woman and her male companion were made to leave the venue by security. Less than an hour later, an attack began that left at least 50 people dead. Witness Brianna Hendricks said the woman had been behaving strangely before her outburst. Miss Hendricks, who had been in Vegas to celebrate her 21st birthday, told Mail Online, "There was a lady who came running up behind us in the concert, and she started to play with people's hair, acting crazy, and she told us that we're all going to fucking die. She said, 'They're all around us, and we were going to die.'" Miss Hendricks said the woman had claimed her boyfriend could not breathe in order to push her way through the crowd to the front row. She said, "It seemed she was telling us to either warn us, or she was part of it, and she was telling us because she knew we were going to die. It was so scary. It felt like she had knowledge of what was about to happen." Miss Hendricks returned to the Mandalay Bay about 15 minutes before the shooting and witnessed the subsequent carnage from her hotel room. "It makes me feel uncomfortable," said Miss Hendricks. "I thought the woman's warning, had a correlation to the shooting." She described the woman who gave the warning as Hispanic, probably about 5'5" with brown hair, and said the woman's boyfriend was also Hispanic. The authorities have yet to comment on whether the woman's warning was just a bizarre coincidence or whether it actually did have something to do with the mass shooting. After the suspected gunman, Stephen Paddock, a 64-year-old white man, was confirmed dead, police said they had also located a woman connected with him, Marilou Danley. Clark County Sheriff Joseph Lombardo later revealed that Miss Danley was in fact out of the country in the Philippines and was not believed to have been involved in the shooting. He told reporters, "We have located her out of the country. She was not with him when he checked into his Mandalay Bay hotel room. We have discovered he was using some of her identification. We have had conversation with her, and we believe her at this time not to be involved." It was later revealed Paddock even rented the rooms under her name using her ID. According to the Australian National, the girlfriend of the Las Vegas shooter, Stephen Paddock, claimed she worked for the FBI on a loan application. Investigative journalist Riva Mendoza reported that Marilou Danley, whose fingerprints were also found on Paddock's hoard of ammunition packed into unused rifle magazines, told the Consumer Credit Reporting Bureaus that her place of employment was the Federal Bureau of Investigation. According to the True Pundit, when contacted Friday, one FBI source said the Bureau might have made payments to Danley, but it is above my level, the source said, referring to access to the FBI's confidential informant participant and payment records. The source said, "Bosses are concerned with the new revelations about Danley's financial relationship with the FBI." It later surfaced that in the 70s, she had been a fighter with insurgents fighting against Marcos in the Philippines and was most likely a long-time CIA asset. Marilou Ocampo Natividad was her name at the time, and they called her May Escrita Fighter. She was subsequently sponsored by Carl W. Ford Jr., China analyst with the CIA, to gain entry to the United States. By October 11th, Reuters and the New York Times reported that Clark County Sheriff Joseph Lombardo presented an updated timeline of events for the Las Vegas gunman who killed 60 people and himself in the deadliest mass shooting in modern U.S. history. Police said a security guard had been shot 6 minutes before Stephen Paddock began strafing an outdoor concert on October 1st from his 32nd floor suite of the Mandalay Bay Hotel, not after, as initially reported. The delay has raised questions about why Paddock stopped firing and why it took police so long to get to his room. There have been several changes in the official account and timeline of Paddock's shooting of hotel security guard Campos, and in their first statement about the incident, police officials inaccurately reported that Campos arrived on the scene after Paddock began firing into the crowd. In a second statement, police officials reported again inaccurately that Campos was shot 6 minutes before Paddock began firing into the crowd. That report had been based on a 9:59 p.m. notation in a hotel security log, which in a third statement was determined to have been the time when Campos encountered the barricaded door. Sheriff Lombardo dismissed allegations that the changing timeline was the result of some kind of conspiracy between the police department, the FBI, and MGM Resorts International, saying, "Nobody is attempting to hide anything in reference to this investigation. The dynamics and the size of this investigation requires us to go through voluminous amounts of information in order to draw an accurate picture." Lawyers for the injured claimed that attorney Catherine Lombardo, who launched the civil lawsuits against and investigation into the October 1st, 2017 Mandalay Bay shooting, was right when she asserted that the MGM Mandalay Bay Casino paid him for his silence, set up the public relations stunt on The Ellen Show, which was coincidentally owned by MGM, and rushed their security guard Jesus Campos into hiding.
It was a publicity stunt, try to get their good PR back, right? They're trying to get themselves to look good again. Let's present him as a hero. Let's tell Ellen what to ask. Let's tell him what to say to make him look like a hero. And it was offensive to the 22,000 people that were there. To this day, he's gone underground. No one else has been able to contact him, find him. MGM had him sequestered in a property that they own. One of our investigators went to his house, and there is a security guard, plain clothes, parked outside of his house in a car, just an unmarked car, that is most likely employed by MGM, who hopped out quickly and cut her off at the path and said, "Whoa, whoa, you know, what do you need? Can I help you? No, you can't knock on that door. No, you can't go in. No, he's not here." So they're holding him. So the whole thing is a sham.
The Baltimore Post-Examiner revealed in an article that Campos was paid for his silence, signed a non-disclosure agreement, and that the Ellen DeGeneres TV show appearance was scripted. In its reporting, the BPE reveals that an interview with the brother-in-law of Campos confirms that MGM booked the TV show appearance. Campos was flown to the TV show by MGM, that the walking cane that Campos used on TV was just a prop, and that MGM gave him a rental car, provided several hotel suites for him and his family at the Dara Hotel, and that MGM did, in fact, hide Campos in a condo in the Las Vegas area. Campos was injured during the Route 91 shooting when he was a security guard on the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay Hotel during the massacre of thousands of concert-goers by shooter Stephen Paddock. The shooter opened fire for approximately 15 minutes on the open-air venue, firing thousands of rounds into the crowd before he took his own life with a single gunshot to the head. The most shocking confirmation from the BPE newspaper came when Campos was reported as saying that the hotel security staff knew that Paddock had weapons inside his hotel room. The news article dated December 9th, 2018 is titled, "Exclusive. MGM Resorts International buys Mandalay Bay security officer Jesus Campos silence with all expenses paid trips, condos in exchange for NDA." In it, the reporter confirms Lombardo's assertions. Luis Castro said his former brother-in-law, Mandalay Bay security officer Jesus Campos, told him that MGM Resorts International knew that gunman Stephen Paddock had suspicious amounts of luggage and guns in his room, but security neglected it because of his high roller status. He said Campos signed a non-disclosure agreement with MGMRI. Campos received an all-expenses-paid trip and gifted 2 condos where he could reside. MGM Resorts International hid Campos under guard at the Dara Hotel and Spa after the October 1st, 2017 Las Vegas massacre for protection, where his room and meals were provided. This odd story gets even more unusual when reports surfaced tying Campos to the Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center, where he had gone for his alleged stress therapy, which had once been a prominent facility used in the CIA's mind control program ran by Louis Jolyon West as a part of Project MKUltra. Before we establish who Stephen Paddock could potentially have been, we should pull on yet another compelling thread that is largely speculative, seemingly tangential, yet very intriguing. A story of a counter-coup in Saudi Arabia playing out in Las Vegas on October 1st, 2017 at the Mandalay Bay. Multiple reports suggest that the massacre was presented to the public as just another mass shooting, opportunistically exploiting the tragedy while providing another false flag event in order to cover up an assassination attempt on the Saudi Crown Prince and key United States ally, Mohammed bin Salman. The Daily Sheeple began the report by highlighting the FBI handler in the Las Vegas massacre who whispered in the ear of the city sheriff, "Don't go there," when asked a pertinent question by the media. And with so many other accounts of there being multiple shooters, gates locked so that people couldn't escape the carnage, and too many other obvious questions, such as shootings occurring in other casinos not within range of Paddock's hotel room window. What remains is why are so many details about the event being covered up, and even more, was Stephen Paddock really just a scapegoat for an even more sinister event? What the media failed to even mention was that at the time of the Las Vegas massacre, the highly controversial Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, was in a resort at the same time as the shootings took place, and is alleged to have been seen in a video being ushered out to escape what may have been an assassination attempt. Shortly after, the Crown Prince returned to Saudi Arabia and executed the arrests and killings of dozens, if not hundreds, of princes and officials in what the government claimed was a massive sweep to stop corruption. The Independent reported on this by November 6th. Saudi Arabia's young Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has taken his riskiest gamble yet with the stunning arrests of top princes, military officers, government officials, and influential businessmen in the kingdom. The sweep, which the government says is aimed at eliminating corruption, also appears to be aimed at stomping out potential rivals or critics of Prince Mohammed, popularly known as MBS, and the son of King Salman. Most stunning in the arrests of 11 princes and 38 officials and businessmen are the detentions of 2 sons of the late King Abdullah. Until Saturday, Prince Muteb bin Abdullah had headed the powerful National Guard. Prince Turki bin Abdullah was once governor of the capital Riyadh. The story goes, according to journalist Greg Reese, 3 months before the Las Vegas shooting, 32-year-old Mohammed bin Salman was made the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, which was met with President Trump's personal show of support, causing a power struggle between MBS and his cousin, multi-billionaire Al-Walid bin Talal, who is known for funding extremist Wahhabi jihadist groups, and just so happened to co-own the Four Seasons Hotel with Bill Gates on floors 35 through 39 of the Mandalay Bay Hotel building. A video was made public, appearing to show what looks like a weapon firing from a window 6 floors above Paddock's room in the Four Seasons. The theory suggests the mass shooting was a Saudi Arabian assassination plot run amok, and that there was a failed attempt against MBS at the Tropicana Hotel that night, describing the massacre at the Route 91 Harvest Festival as a savage message of warning to President Trump, simultaneously serving as a distraction to create chaos, drawing focus away from the primary target. A video surfaced, filmed on the night of October 1st, showing a group of armed guards telling patrons at the Tropicana Hotel to get their arms up as a highly protected person is escorted through the casino, widely believed to be the future king of Saudi Arabia, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. This theory describes Paddock as a pilot and a gun runner who had accumulated his millions from smuggling weapons, often in covert operations, using the casino and his alleged appetite for video poker as a convenient front to launder dirty money. So who was Stephen Paddock? Stephen Paddock was a former IRS agent, and in 1985, he worked as an auditor for the Defense Contract Audit Agency. Toward the end of the 1980s, Paddock worked for 3 years as an internal auditor for a company that later merged to form none other than Lockheed Martin. A report by Political Velcraft explains that looking closely, the first thing you will notice is that the shooter, Stephen Paddock, had a pilot license and owned 2 planes. This is a well-established fact. These planes are associated with the company Volant LLC. Volant Associates is none other than a Department of Defense contractor. October 18, 2017, an article was published with the title, CIA Creates Las Vegas Massacre Reality Show as Shooter's Information Leads to Takedown of ISIS Leaders, reporting, allegedly at the same time the CIA continues its narrative-fixing meme about the Las Vegas Massacre, CIA gunrunner Stephen Paddock's Filipino girlfriend, Marilu Danley, provided pro-Trump forces with vital intelligence about Paddock's arms deliveries to ISIS terrorists in the Philippines, enabling the Philippines military to defeat the remains of ISIS in the war-torn city of Marawi after their troops took out 2 leading members of the jihadi network. After which, Danley was placed on the U.S. no-fly list, preventing her from leaving America. To the truest understanding of CIA gunrunner Stephen Paddock's arms deals with ISIS terrorists in the Philippines as it relates to the Las Vegas Massacre began in July 2017 when former Obama regime holdover officials embedded within President Trump's Department of Transportation shockingly granted U.S. air rights to Silkway Airlines. Silkway Airlines, this report explains, is an Azerbaijani state-run cargo airline that was exposed in February 2017 as being a major carrier for arms to terrorists that it hid in diplomatic cargo and whom Bulgarian investigative reporter Dilyana Gaitensheva documented the CIA was a major customer of, and that after making these revelations was interrogated, tortured, and then fired from her job for linking the CIA to Syrian terrorists. Upon President Trump being alerted to these former Obama regime officials approving Silkway Airlines flights into the U.S., FBI forces loyal to him revealed that an early June 2017 flight of this airline landed in Chicago and was met by known associates of the feared Las Vegas-based Russian mafia leader Razdan Shulaya, and whom these same FBI forces quickly put under arrest, along with nearly his entire criminal organization. On October 1st, a Silkway Airlines flight from Dubai was scheduled to land in Chicago, but whose arrival was delayed until August 3rd due to mechanical issues, and that upon its arrival, an American man named Stephen Paddock arrived at the U.S. Customs Gate of O'Hare International Airport. After the FBI linked both Las Vegas-based Russian mafia leader Razdan Shulaya and Las Vegas-based Stephen Paddock to these Silkway Airlines arms delivery cargo flights directed by the CIA and arriving in Chicago, SVR, the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service analysts, needed no mental exertion at all to quickly determine that they were both part of an international arms smuggling ring and who were able to launder their millions of dollars of profit in the American gambling mecca they both called home. News from the perimeter explained that on November 3rd, 1 month after the massacre, a missile was intercepted by the Saudi military. Some have suggested that it was the final effort by the anti-King Salman faction to take him out. 2 days later, on the 5th, a massive raid on the Wahhabi-aligned Saudi palaces took place. A handful of the anti-Salman faction were killed. 10 princes, including Al-Walid, were held for 80 days at the Ritz-Carlton in Riyadh. According to attorney Matthias Chang, Saudi Prince Al-Walid admitted under interrogation that he sent an elite team of snipers from the Saudi Royal Air Force to the Mandalay Bay Hotel on the night of the Las Vegas massacre. In an email, screen captured and uploaded to Twitter, Chang details how the Saudi prince sent snipers to the Mandalay Bay to occupy the floors above Paddock's room. As if things haven't already been weird enough, I stumbled upon the brilliant work of one of my favorite researchers circulating today by the name of Ken Silva, published at Headline USA, describing that in the aftermath of the 2017 Las Vegas mass shooting, there were reports that gunman Stephen Paddock had told people around him he was a government experiment and would often lie in bed moaning and screaming in mental anguish. A link was provided to an exclusive archived article stating that a prostitute last seen with Las Vegas shooter Stephen Paddock just before his deadly rampage has mysteriously vanished. A Sin City escort was reported missing by her boyfriend several days after the October 1st shooting that left 58 dead and 800 injured. A former sex worker who once dated Paddock and is now cooperating with the FBI told Radar in an exclusive interview. She was telling girls after work that she was scared something would happen to her, claimed former escort Michaela, whose full name is being withheld to protect her identity. She was booked the day before or the day of the shooting before she disappeared. What's more, Radar has learned just before the rampage, Paddock began sending bizarre text messages to another of Michaela's call girl pals. There's messages where Stephen is telling her he's a government experiment and that they are listening to everything he says and does, and they can hack into his brain and take over, Michaela said. In late March of 2023, the FBI released a trove of records that may be related to those claims. The new, heavily redacted FBI records show that a special agent interviewed a worker at Mesa View Hospital in Mesquite, Nevada, about a week after the October 1st shooting. The agent apparently asked the Mesa View worker about rumors that Paddock had been on a psychiatric hold, which is when a patient is being mentally evaluated, often involuntarily. The heavily redacted FBI memo says, Redacted told Redacted that Paddock had been at Mesa View on a psychiatric hold, and that Redacted. The FBI memo also says that a hospital official sent an email to employees instructing them not to search for Paddock's medical records. The name of the official who sent the email was redacted, and no more details about this incident are included in the records. Additionally, the FBI memo discusses who Paddock's sitter may have been. At Mesa View, somebody is required to sit outside of the room where the psychiatric patient is being held. Redacted also heard a rumor that Redacted had sat with Paddock, the FBI memo says. Paddock's rumored Mesa View trips were first revealed in December 2017 when the Las Vegas Review-Journal reported that law enforcement issued a search warrant for all of Paddock's medical records from the facility. There were also media reports from 2017 about Paddock being prescribed diazepam, a sedative hypnotic drug. On September 11th, 2017, less than a month before the massacre, there was an anonymous message posted on 4chan claiming that there was a high-incident project underway and Vegas was the likely target. The post read, If their plan is successful, the state of Nevada will pass a law in the future making all casinos have mandatory metal detectors and backscatter machines. Soon after, a federal law will be passed to put these machines in universities, high schools, federal buildings, you name it. OSI Systems and Chertoff Group are the main producers of these machines. Sometime around 2020, Chertoff and OSI will merge into a single company. After they merge, the owners will sell off all their stock and make billions in profit. Michael Chertoff has been in contact with Sheldon Adelson. Mr. Adelson will become a huge sponsor of these machines, and he will be the first to put them in his casinos when the law passes. Sheldon Adelson was a billionaire megadonor and casino magnate, perennial top single donor to the Donald Trump campaign in 2016, and has been called a Republican kingmaker. Michael Chertoff has quite the history. Not only was he linked to the Clinton Whitewater scandal in 1995 as an appointee of Bill Clinton, naming Chertoff special counsel, but he was also involved as the lead prosecutor presiding over the trial of the blind sheikh Omar Abdul Rahman following the false flag bombing of the World Trade Center building in 1993. Michael Chertoff is a member of the Atlantic Council and was the second United States Secretary of Homeland Security. He's listed as one of the authors of the Patriot Act and was in the convenient position of Assistant Attorney General in charge of criminal investigations on 9/11. After the underwear bomber fiasco, it was Chertoff who recommended new body scanners for airports, while simultaneously making millions of dollars off his lobbying firm Chertoff Group, who represented manufacturers of the scanners, in particular Rapiscan, one of the two companies that were contracted by TSA. As Oscar Wilde once said, the truth is rarely pure and never simple. Welcome to the anatomy of a conspiracy theory. The dark, disturbing layers of deceit intended to fit the conveniently constructed, false narrative socially engineered into the minds of the over-socialized, undereducated, and emotionally reactive American public.